Hello my creative friends, welcome to another art break, and today I'm going to be showing you how you can create this whimsical style gal with her pretty basket of spring flowers. Now if you've ever wanted to paint a whimsical style face using watercolors but you just weren't quite sure of where to begin, I'm going to walk you through the steps, step by step, and show you how you can easily get those little beautiful blush cheeks and those shadows that bring this little character face to life. If you'd like to paint along with me but drawing's not your thing, I do have a sketchbook membership. That's where I have all of the line tracers there so that you can easily just do a trace and paint option, leave out the stress of drawing, and then just start the painting process. Well, let's get started. I can't wait to show you how you can create this whimsical style gal in her basket full of pretty flowers. For this painting, I was using a student grade set of watercolors and I swatched my colors out before I began. I used some of the Scotch Magic brand tape to go ahead and tape my painting down. I always put it on my clothes, get a little of the sticky off first before I put it on my paper. That way it'll help so it doesn't rip your paper up in the end when you take it off. The beginning color I'm using for her flesh tone is this light peachy color. With watercolor, you're always starting with the highlight colors first, and then we're painting the shadows as we go along. This color is in my set. It has a little bit of white mixed in it, and it makes a nice little light flesh tone color, but I'm going to be adding darker shadows on the top. That's why I'm starting a little lighter. Now that those colors are wet, I need to go down to an area that won't really touch those areas. I'm going to work on her apron a little bit. And I have this real pretty shade of blue-green in my set, and I want to do a theme of that kind of that light color of blue, little bits of pink, and some of pops of oranges and yellows as well. So this color fit my color scheme really well. I'm going to lay this color on in about the consistency of coffee and then pick up just a little bit more of that color on my brush, and I'm going to be brushing that around the outside, around the pocket, and because that area is wet, those colors should kind of pull towards the center of the wet area and make those nice little subtle color blends on their own. But if the color sits too banded, like you put that color on and it's just a band of color, you can always rinse your brush out, give it a squeeze, and then kind of gently tickle those areas and blend your colors to help them move from dark to light. This is just a little shadow area I want to add to this apron to give it more of a contour look. Up next, I was going to be working on her hair, and this is where I kind of made a little bit of a mistake. I had swatched my colors on a piece of paper and I thought they looked fine, but when I put them on and as it dried, my color was looking more like a yellow-green. Like this poor little gal had a really bad hair dye moment where she thought she was going to have a golden color hair and she ended up with greenish kind of gold hair. But I'll show you how you can fix it. I did end up fixing it and tone my colors all the way down. But it is funny how they look so much more green on the camera than when I saw them in real life as they were putting it on. But as they dried, I definitely could see that my yellows had a lot of green in it, and I didn't want her to have that greeny yellow hair. Since the inside of those areas were wet, I decided to work a little bit on the background. I wanted to add a pink church. My church was going to have a pink of the wooden part, but for the roof, I was going to make it orange. One of my favorite color combinations for spring is pink and orange, and I thought I would add it to the background on this church as well. Since I was working in the background, I decided to jump to the other side and work a little bit on those little lollipop style trees. I was going to be basing the two short ones in the bright color green, then bump down a color square in my box, and then take a little bit of that and tap a little darker green. That's going to make that wet on wet color blend. The light green is still wet, and then I'm adding a little bit of dark green on there, and it'll make its own little blend. I'm also going to jump up and do the tree that's right above them. I'm choosing a little darker green up there, and I'm just going to be okay if those colors float together. I decided to make her little shoes a bright pink, so I added the pink down below. Then I needed to give my whole painting a dry before I did another layer on her. So I want to make sure it's all dry. I could see then that my hair color looked very green, not what I wanted. So what I needed to do was to choose a brown that was more red brown. Red and green are complementary colors, and they're going to neutralize each other. I only want to mix this color to about coffee consistency though. I don't want to go too dark and too opaque. I just want to put those next translucent layer colors on and neutralize that green. For the basket, I had learned my lesson about the hair, so I chose more of a yellow ochre golden color for my basket, and I layered that color on the basket part as well as the handle. I'm going to be using the same colors that I used for the basket for her hat. I'm also going to be using a little bit of that golden color around her pocket on her apron as well. When I'm doing these color choices, I like to bounce my colors around, so if I have some in the middle, can I have an area that might add a little bit more at the top and at the bottom, or from side to side? It just makes your painting a little bit more balanced if you can bounce your colors around your painting. Now that the hair has just had a little bit more time to dry, I'm going to use that light color of the red brown again and put another layer on. She's going to end up having a darker brown color hair in the end. So what I thought was going to be more of a golden blonde, she's going to end up having dark hair, and I think it ends up looking great that way too. Now I gave everything another complete dry before I started my next layers. Now I'm going to be working on that face, and I wanted to make sure my hair was completely dry, so I don't want that hair color to be bleeding out into her face so much. But I am going to use that red brown that I did use on her hair, and I'm mixing it a little bit with the base color that I had put on. So I'm getting a little bit rusty tone, but it's a little lighter than her hair, a little darker than the original color. I'm going to focus by tapping a little bit of that darkness around her forehead, a little bit onto the outside of her cheeks, and then underneath her neck. That's going to be a dark area because that would be in shadow, and just a little bit kind of on her chest where her collar line, underneath her collar line. These are just tiny taps of color, and I'm blending it out. I don't want too much water in that area, because if I get too much water, I'm going to get those hard bloom lines, and I'm not looking for that. So I need to make sure I'm using my paper towel, tapping it on my paper, and getting some of the water out and not over adding the water. I'm just looking for subtle taps of color on her face. Now you can see me here adding another layer to that apron on the front. I'm using the same color. I'm just adding another layer. For the ruffle down below, I wanted to have a white feeling. I took some of the gray that was in my set and I watered it down to even less than tea consistency, and I'm just adding just a few little splashes of gray here and there. The church is dry in the background, so I'm going to add another layer of pink to that. Her dress is going to be pink as well, but I'm going to be using a slightly different, darker shade of pink in my color set. I don't want it to be the same color as the church or her shoes, but I want it to be just a slightly darker pink, and that one works fairly well. And I'm just basically doing the same way I had done the other layers. I mixed it to about coffee consistency and painting around the apron and up above. On the top of her dress, on the body part of her dress, she does have a cuff area there on the one where you can see inside of the cuff. That area is going to have a darker shadow inside of there, so it looks like it's going back and the hand is sticking out of inside of the cuff area. But these are just little small areas, and I'm using my number 6 round brush and tapping in the colors as I go. The area that I concentrate on to create the shadows for her dress is basically underneath her ruffle of her apron and at the very bottom of her dress and the outside of her dress. That's where those shadows are going to be. And on the top, I'm going to add the little shadow inside, on the inside of her arm, and then on the outside of the arm. And I'm going to be trying to leave the inside or the middle of her sleeves a little bit lighter, and that'll just create that contour look of that the sleeves are going around. Just these little taps of subtle color can really make a difference. The inside of the heart is also going to be pink, and I decided to carry the same theme from the church into the pocket. So I made the heart pink, but I'm going to be adding a border of orange all the way around, and then on the inside of that pocket it's going to be that golden yellow, the same color that I used on her basket and on her hat. To carry that orange color from the background to the foreground, I decided to make the centers of the little flowers orange. I'm also going to be adding just a little bit of that orange color to the front part of her pocket. In the end, I do decide to add the little orange to the flower on her hat as well. That just kind of brings that color all the way around. Now for her hat, I'm going to be using the same colors as I did for the basket. So I'm starting out with my lightest gold color, making sure it wasn't the green one, but more of a yellow gold. I'm going to use that as the first layer. I'm also going to be brushing a little bit of that yellow around the inside of my pocket. I've also got just the tiniest band of color in between the blue of her apron and the white lace, and I chose to make that yellow as well. Her little apron does have an eyelet lace at the bottom, and also at the top of her dress there's a little eyelet lace there too. I picked up a little bit more of that gray color, about mixed to tea consistency again, and I just tap each of the individual circles with a tiny little dot of the gray, and that just adds to the little bit more of the interest of being an eyelet lace. Now this basket does need a little bit of green in the background to fill it up, so I'm just using some of the same greens that I used on my trees behind there and just tapped a little bit of the green here and there. The stems for the flowers, I used the same greens, just added them on to the front where the stems are. I did choose to use a little bit darker shade of green here and there too, just popping in the colors while they're still wet and letting those colors blend on their own. Now to brighten that heart up and also adding a little bit on the skirt, on her dress, is some of this neon pink color. It's one of my favorite colors in this set. I love the pop that this neon color can bring to your painting, and I just add little splashes of that color here and there. Next area I'm going to be working on is the blush on her cheeks, and I'm going to be using those pink colors that I had used on her dress. That's what I'm going to be using on her cheeks too. I mixed some color up about the consistency of no more than milk, but I'm going to be adding just a slight band of that color on the outside of the cheeks, and then taking my brush, rinsing it out, then tapping it on my paper towel, getting some of the water out, and then just kind of tickling that color and bringing it in towards the center of the nose. So the darkest area will be on the outside of the cheek towards her face area there, and then just blending and tapping the color in as I go. It's a great way to make these little cheeks. I also like to do that same cheek style on all my animals when I add that cheek look of the blush look, and it works great for these little whimsical gals as well. Now to add just the tiniest bit of shadow at the very bottom of the brim of the hat. That's just going to make it look a little bit more curved, putting a darker brown shadow just at the very base. I'm also going to tap a little bit darker shadow where the bright brim is, the hat part that fits on her head. That's going to be a slightly darker color. I'm going to use those same colors that I used in her hair, the reddish browns, and tap in a little bit of basket texture to my basket and adding the same browns to her hat. To paint the tulips, they're small little flowers, but I'm using the same colors that I used on her dress, and then I'm just slightly tapping in the lightest shade of pink, and then I'll come in and tap just the darker shade of pink at the base of those flowers, and then that color should kind of mix on its own. I don't have to do a lot of fussy work on these flowers. They're pretty small, so I'm just adding just the tiniest bit of detail. For the small flowers in the basket, I wanted them to have a white feeling as well, so I used the same gray that I had used down at the lace and just tapped in a little bit of gray here and there. I also tapped a little bit of gray on the very top flower. I wanted to add just a tiny bit of cool shadow as well, so I picked up more of a pretty shade of blue in my set and just tapped the little bit of that tiny bit of blue in there. I didn't want the flowers to look like they were blue in the end, but I just wanted it to be more of a cool shadow. And I like that look in the end. They're still white flowers without being overly blue or overly gray. Now to work a little bit more on the background, I had given my piece a complete dry with my dryer, and I'm going to be starting the green grass area that she's standing on first. The lightest shade of green will be the one that's in the foreground, and then I'll move a slightly darker as I go back. These colors, I'm laying them in next to each other. Even though my colors are wet, I'm fine if my color happens to move down into the next layer, and I don't need to have that separation. I'm just putting the little darker shade of green in the back hills and then adding the bright green towards the front. I gave my paper a complete dry before I began the blue background. I'm using a light shade of blue, and when you do a sky, it's always going to be darker at the top, and as it moves towards the horizon, it's going to be lighter. I'm also going to be tapping in just a few little clouds, and I like to use a bathroom tissue for this. It's just the nice weight to do it, and it doesn't have a lot of pattern on it, so you can easily go in and tap in a few clouds at the top. I'm going to dry my piece one more time, and then I'm going to begin the ink work as well as adding all the little scribbly bits using my color pencil. For the pen detail, I was going to be using a black micron pen in the nib size 005. I wanted that super small size for the little facial features. She's got a tiny little face. I'm using it for her eyes and just kind of scribbling in the darkness, leaving a catch light of that white paper showing. And her nose is just a simple little U as well as her mouth, so I don't need a lot of extra line work there. I'm just adding a very simple face. I did do a little bit of the line work in her hair, and I did do some on the church as well as the trees and the background, but I wanted to keep the dark pen work to a more of a minimum on this and add a few more scribble details using my color pencils. I didn't want an overly dark piece because it has such light, pretty, bright spring colors on it. I had switched to a 001 to do the details for the basket and for the trees. I wanted those lines just to be a tiny bit thicker, so the 01 size worked well for this. Oh, I almost forgot. I do have those little birds in the sky as well. Those are kind of more of an M shape, a little flattened out M shape, and they're just super little tiny, little scribbles on the top, but they really do add a little interest in the background in the sky to have the tiniest little birds up there. On those little eyelet areas, I chose one side of the circle and just did a half stroke around the circles and did some stitch lines around the pocket. Now let's go ahead and switch to some color pencils and add a few more scribble bits. I wanted to add just the softest bit of pink on her cheeks. The Canson paper is a fairly smooth paper, and I like using the color pencils on the Canson paper. All watercolor paper has different textures, and the Canson watercolor is fairly smooth when it comes to watercolor paper, and so the color pencils work really well on that. To add a little bit more interest to that apron, I made some line design on there as well. And I added some little bit of scribbly bits onto her dress using some oranges and soft peach colors on her hats. Again, I wanted to keep the colors really light and bright. Added a little bit of kind of a more of a turquoise color to some of the flowers. And for her dress, or for her hair, I added almost as a purple brown. I thought I liked that extra color of adding brown, but maybe just a little bit of purple to it. And it was a fun color to add to my painting. If you're a sketchbook member, I always encourage you to do 2 sketches right away. Then you'll have 2 paintings to work on. It's a great way to practice your different colors and patterns. And if you're going to draw one, you might as well draw 2 and easily paint them together. It's a quick little painting project, and it's a lot of fun to do. Instead of using a black pencil or black pen, I had a dark brown in my set, and that's what I used to add some outlining around the shoes and her dress and her apron. It was just a softer look. I did add a little bit more of scribble bits of white using my Sharpie white pencil, and it's a great little color crayon look, and I love that texture on the very top. Well, she's all finished, and I'm going to be putting her inside of a frame and setting her in the studio amongst some of the other spring collection that I have created this year on my YouTube channel. This spring, we've been busily painting another group of whimsical style characters and lots of sweet little bunnies crafted as well. And here's our sweet little girl sitting inside of this Dollar General frame, and it looks so pretty sitting inside of this light color wooden frame. Her sweet little smile is just so tiny, but those pretty little blush cheeks bring that little extra whimsical character to this sweet little face. If you like doing whimsical style as much as I do, come on over to my channel and see what I'm doing. I'd love to have more creative friends join me. Give me a thumbs up, give me a comment. That really does help YouTube push my videos out there. Well, thanks for joining me today, and hopefully you'll come back and join me again, and perhaps next time you'll paint right along with me.